Good afternoon. My name is Wilmarie Newton, and I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's webinar. We will be answering questions as we go along, so you can type them into the question box and hit send. If you have further questions after the webinar has ended, please feel free to email them to me, and I will forward them to the appropriate person that can answer them. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be archived on CABE's website under Professional Development. And now I'd like to introduce Patrice McCarthy, Executive Director and General Counsel.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this preview of our lobbying day, which will be taking place this coming Wednesday, March 8th, beginning at 8:45 at the Legislative Office Building. We thought that if we gave you an overview of some of the critical issues that are before the General Assembly, then you would be able to literally hit the ground running when you get to the Legislative Office Building on Wednesday. We will be taking the opportunity to honor Senator Martin Looney on Wednesday morning for his efforts to support funding for the Special Education Excess Cost Grant. And we'll be able to give you an in-person update on some of these issues before we set you free to lobby your legislators and also to consider testifying before the Education Committee, because they are holding a public hearing on Wednesday, and Sheila will be talking about several of those important bills. I'm going to begin with just a few comments on funding issues. The legislature has already passed legislation, the first legislation adopted in this session of the General Assembly, Public Act 23-1, that continues the funding for school lunches through the end of this school year. And it also makes the technical change necessary to ensure that all of the special education excess grant funds that were appropriated actually are able to be expended. So it increases the reimbursement percentage for each of the three tiers that are in that grant. So we were very appreciative of the legislature taking that action. There are two major funding bills that the legislature is considering, and we have had wonderful testimony provided by several of the CABE officers on these issues, so know that you are being represented very ably by the CABE leadership. We encourage you to continue to be in touch with your legislators, to have conversations with them in person, by email, and by inviting them to your board meetings so that these funding issues remain at the forefront of their consideration as they look at the overall state budget for the next 2 fiscal years. So the two major pieces of funding legislation, House Bill 5003 is essentially the state and local finance project proposal to accelerate the implementation of the ECS phase-in. The other bill, House Bill 6662, would implement the governor's budget recommendations, which include continuing the phase-in as it was agreed to in the bipartisan legislation in 2017. Obviously, CABE would support an acceleration of that, particularly as districts are going to face a significant impact when the federal COVID funds end. And we know that many of you have needed to use those for things that you recognize as ongoing expenses, providing services during the summer or tutoring for students to help close the achievement gap, the gap that existed before the pandemic, as well as the gap that has been exacerbated by the pandemic. And in addition, the social emotional needs of students, again, exacerbated by the pandemic, but those are ongoing needs. So we know that those resources are going to continue in your districts even after the federal funds have ended. The House Bill 6662 also contains a number of the governor's proposals around capping various grants. CABE has always been opposed to caps on reimbursement grants because it means that the safety nets that are supposed to be in place when you have to make expenditures for state mandates are now full of holes because the state has limited their exposure, but you are not able to limit your financial exposure. So the bill proposes caps on the health and welfare services for private pupil grant, the regional education service grant, the adult education grant, as well as the transportation grant, which actually has not been funded at all for a number of years. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Sheila to talk about the other upcoming issues.
Great. I will just add on the special ed, the cap was around 140 million for a number of years. We are honoring Senator Looney because of the increase that he and his legislators he initiated, and the other legislators approved a $16 million increase in ECS, as well as a disbursement schedule, which Patrice talked about earlier. So that brought it to 156. To fully fund, it would be about 180 million, and that is something we'd like to see. But we don't know where this cap could potentially go. So we'll move on to the next bill that we wanted to talk about was House Bill 6663, an act establishing English Learners Bill of Rights. This would put in place a number of rights to attend public school regardless of immigration status, parents and guardians to have translator present at critical interactions, the right of parents and guardians to receive information about the progress of their student, students' improvement in English language development, equal access to all grade level programming, equal access to all grade level matter, and the right to receive an annual language proficiency testing, and support services aligned and intervention plans that would help the school district provide to all students. In testimony from the commissioner on this bill, she said that it would require new and enhanced actions by the LEAs. She couldn't have been more right. There are hundreds of languages that the students speak and their parents speak in the state of Connecticut. This one section that would say to have a translator present at critical interactions with teachers and school administrators would be very costly to the state of Connecticut, as we did testify to. There are, as I say, a number of languages spoken in the state of Connecticut. So, and we don't know who would be certified in each of these languages, that they would be available to the district, and what costs would be associated with this. And again, it does say critical interactions. You cannot get somebody to immediately be in the hallway with a parent. What might be a critical interaction. So that's a part of the bill that we have trouble with. The next bill is that we're going to talk about is further along. There is a bill there, 6757 on teacher performance evaluations. It makes revisions to teacher evaluation and support programs. The department has a bill, we'll find it further along, but it's Senate Bill 1028, and that bill seeks to make a change for allowing the commissioner to make changes to those evaluation process versus having the State Board of Ed make those changes. I'm sorry, versus the legislature make some of the changes to that. So this gives a little bit more, no, I'm sorry, State Board of Ed make the changes. So allows the commissioner some flexibility to make those changes. And that's an ongoing process that the working group has been working alongside the commissioner for about 18 months. And that working group is made up of all the education institutions in the state of Connecticut have a representative on that group. So it's very inclusive. There is a bill moving forward here, 6758, that gets at staffing levels for the department. It remains to be seen because these positions that are being asked for are not a part of what the governor projected or the governor proposed. So we will see if the Appropriations Committee and thereby the full legislature would include these in the budget. But as it reads there, looking for staff to work on coursework for financial literacy. I'm I'm sorry, no, 5 specialists for special education. And then it goes further to say at least 1 curriculum coordinator to provide assistance and curriculum materials for a number of different coursework listed there below. Moving down below, we have a House Bill 6760. It's civics, education, and media literacy. This bill is really still evolving, I guess is the best way to say it. This was something, the civics end of it was something that Representative Smith wanted to see done in terms of kind of an outcry from January 6th and having our civics process more, making the public more aware of the civics process as a whole. And again, as I say, this is not specifically to education, but it does touch on education. So, and again, that's a work in progress. House Bill 6761, a review of drinking water supply locations. This would require your districts to conduct tests of drinking water supply locations and equipment and permit the boards to apply for a grant to remedy any of these, any actions that might need to be taken by your district. 6842, an act establishing a local food for school incentive program and expansion of the Connecticut CT Grown for Connecticut Kids grant program. I don't know. Establish a local food service incentive grant program, and it would SDE may provide a grant for purchase of kitchen equipment, engaging with the school nutrition, with the farm, with local farmers or school consultants. And it would also increase funding to the CT Grown for Kids CT grant program. So again, a funding bill that we don't know much further will move along.
Sheila?
Yes.
Before you go on, someone asked, how does CABE decide what to support, like which bills to support?
So we have a set of principles and resolutions that we have agreed to back every year we agree to them, or board members agree to them every November in our delegate assembly. It's a open process where a member of each board that's a member of CABE has an access to vote on those proposals. There are a number of proposals in here that don't match up with what we've already agreed to in our proposals, and we are guided by the general philosophy of those moving forward. We don't support any mandate on a district unless it comes with funding, and it's funny how that doesn't necessarily always happen. I guess I would say, do you have anything to add to that? Or?
No, in terms of CABE's affirmative priorities, our State Relations Committee, which meets every December after the delegate assembly, the board members that participate in that committee set the priorities that we will affirmatively pursue, and we usually try to focus on 4 or 5 priorities, knowing that there will be a multitude of bills that come out that we need to provide testimony on based on the overall positions of the association.
I'm going to take you to House Bill 6844, an act concerning paraeducators. This would exclude mandated trainings from professional development programs for paraeducators. They want the ability to have as much time in their field training. Would require collection of data, require annual reporting. This is a bill that will probably be heard for a public hearing on March 15th, I believe. The next bill is 6845, establishing a statewide book gifting program and a home reading grant program. This is a very interesting, great idea to establish a statewide gifting program for the purposes of providing age-appropriate books to a child from birth to age 5, which is and would be every month. So that's 60 some odd books, as I remember that correctly with my math. It also creates a home reading grant program for the purpose of awarding a state matching grant or matching funds to any school district that provides age-appropriate books to children. in grades K through 5 inclusive. So that's great that there's potentially a matching grant to go with that, as it would be established, but that would mean that the rest of it is on the districts to provide. And there's also no guarantee that those matching funds would continue to be there all throughout you all having to put that in motion year after year. The next bill, House Bill 6846, enact implementation of the crisis response drills in public schools, makes some changes to the manner and the timing of drills. It would change the crisis response drills to be once every 3 months to once a year, and then fire drills to be 2 every 3 months to 2 a year. And then, as you'll notice there, it makes some changes to the manner in which you can opt out and how to accommodate those who have experienced past trauma, and the list goes on there. Senate Bill 1, an act concerning the transparency in education. This is well, there's an awful lot in here. One of the key things that we saw was an annual offer for SDE to annually offer training program for newly elected Board of Ed members on roles and responsibilities, duties and obligations of the board, and district budgeting and education finance. In a conversation that Patrice had with the commissioner, she said,
I suggested that it would be great if the department would develop this training program in consultation with CABE. And it's our understanding that that will be the testimony that the department offers on Wednesday. We have a great working relationship with the department, but it's always better to make sure that the statute codifies an ongoing working relationship going into the future.
And we do offer right now, every 2 years, a program in usually the first week of December or so for newly elected school board members, or any school board member for that matter. This legislation goes on to say that a new board member must complete this training within 1 year. And I'll move on from there. The department's bill is this Senate Bill 1028. This is, it does a few things, and then there's a lot of cleanup in here as well, but it does automatically renew every 5 years the Alliance grant. It caps the number of districts from 233. It's currently at 36. It changes the, there are 3 districts, I believe, that are, their funding is based on the wrong year, so that changes that back to everyone in Alliance being based off of 2012. And it allows districts that, the 3 districts that would be removed from the Alliance to continue to have their designation. Yes, they would have designation as a Alliance district for ECS purposes only. So they would continue to receive the ECS. Again, as I mentioned earlier, there's a section in there that the commissioner would recommend changes on the evaluation and support system to the legislature and have the legal authority to make those changes. There's a whole sections on Chef in terms of cleanup work there per the agreement. The next bill down there is Senate Bill 1093, an act implementing the recommendations of the Juvenile Justice Policy and Oversight Committee concerning education. JPOC, as it's known, has been around for, I'm going to say, at least 5 years, maybe more, and has subcommittees that are doing a lot of different work. There are work in there being done on suspension and expulsion rates, submitting that type of work to the department to look at, to have the JPOC look at it as well. When the commissioner testified, she said that there ought to be some consideration of the fact that any type of reporting to JPOC would have to be looked at in terms of if it would violate any type of FERPA and in terms of privacy rights of the students. Because even if you are only having a few districts come forward with their information, you could potentially know who those students are. So that would be problematic. Senate Bill 1094, an act concerning the implementation of the reading models or programs. It's quite apparent that the legislature is well aware of the implementation problems that districts are having. There is certainly a strong contingent of people are saying this needs to go forward. It just needs to go forward. But they do recognize, as I said, the implementation problems. So this does delay by a year, but it does also talk towards the waiver process as well. On districts that are seeking waivers, if a waiver is granted, they must implement that waiver by July of 2023. So a number of you in the last week, I think 90 districts applied for a waiver. Will, if you are so granted, will need to, as I say, work towards that by July of this year. Otherwise, it gets to having you partially implement beginning in July of 2023 and July of 2024. And we will seek guidance on what partially implementing means. Let's see, an act concerning school nurses, Senate Bill 1097. We have had work with the nurses on some of these changes over the years. They are seeking, as for a number of years, have been seeking to have regulations changed by department to have to have them attain a bachelor's degree in nursing or a related field, so that they have a professional nurse in school districts. We are of the belief that they would limit the pool of nurses you're able to hire, and would want to see you have as many options as possible to hire a qualified nurse. The bill also asks for nurses to complete at least 15 hours, up from 10 hours to 15 hours of professional development, which we would agree to, and it would be approved by your local board, and it would be, they need to do that every 2 years. And then they are also looking to create a special service endorsement for nurses, which at this point we're not sure how each of your districts, how that would fall in each of your districts. So we didn't support that at this point. The department in the testimony that they offered were also going to take a step back and take a look at that as well. So they offered no particular testimony there either. I guess I'll close with a couple other thoughts here. Senate Bill 1166, an act concerning the implementation of the Connecticut school climate policy, would require districts to implement the Connecticut school climate policy, and may adopt it until you shall adopt it by July 1 of 2025. There are a number of functions in terms of administering a survey, creating a plan, updating annually, and we have to hold in-service trainings, have modules for beginning educators. There's a number of pieces of number of implementation steps in that piece of legislation. Two final thoughts, and then I'll open it up to some of the other bills that are in there. There will be another public hearing on the 15th, and the bills are not yet out yet. They need to be filed 6 days before the public hearing, and notice goes out 5 days before the public hearing. We expect to see a bill on mandates, and we expect to see a bill that has professional development mandates. Patrice led a group, a working group, to make some changes there, and we'll see how that was received by the committee leadership. Do you want to add anything there?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. There are a number of bills in here. If you've got specific questions, I can take them. And we're hoping to see you on Wednesday. If you've got questions on how Wednesday will work, we're happy to take those as well. But we have changed things up. We're not going to be at the Bushnell and have you come over to the legislature. We're going to be at the legislature and help you with your lobbying if you need to better understand that process. We hope that you have taken the time to make appointments.
Any questions, Will Murray?
Now we'll give it some time, see if any questions come through.
Great.
No questions so far.
Can you wrap it up?
Yeah, I would say thank you. We hope to see you on Wednesday.
Absolutely.
If you can't make it Wednesday and want to be involved in the process, just, continue to read what we send out, but, give us a call. We're happy to answer questions along the way. But talking with your legislators, letting them know how you could potentially implement some of this work and what it might cost your district would be very helpful in getting our collective point across.
Have a wonderful afternoon.